Hi, welcome back to a new video, and in this one I want to talk about one of the projects I was commissioned to do earlier this year. I met a guy by the name of Dan Preston at the Swindon Art Fringe, where I was curating an exhibition and he was also one of the artists taking place in it. Dan has just finished his submission for his Fine Art Masters, and as part of his Masters, as well as a series of sculptures and other works that he wanted to include in his final submission for his Masters, he also wanted to do something a little bit unusual. So Dan's theme for his Masters was basically trauma, mental health, and using art as a journey to basically overcome that trauma, process it, etc., etc. So what happened was Dan, myself, and a local tattoo artist in Swindon by the name of Jem Vero, and I've known Jem a very long time, most of all of mine. In fact, the vast majority of my tattoos have been done with Jem over the years, and she's also an artist and was also one of the artists taking part in curating an exhibition in the Swindon Art Fringe earlier this year. So what Dan wanted to do as part of his submission, and before anybody gets all silly about fine art and it's daft and this isn't really art, the piece I'm going to talk about, this was one tiny part of his submission. What he wanted to do was get a tattoo done that basically represented if he'd reached over his shoulder and effectively dug his fingers in and ripped the skin off, exposing muscle and bone underneath. So it was fairly gory in that regard. And Dan and Dan, Jem and I got talking, and I said I'd be quite happy if he was interested to photograph this. And Dan had already been thinking about getting it photographed as part of the submission. So that's where he commissioned me, and I got involved in the project. Now, for his actual submission, he had a book created. So this was then, as part of his fine art submission, this was basically, he had plaster casts done of both of his arms. They were exhibited and the book was placed in it for people to look through. And basically my photographs of the process that he went through to get the tattoo done are what's included in this book. There are only 3 copies of this book in existence. There was one done for Dan, one done for myself, and one done for Jem. So it's a fairly obscure piece, to say the least. Now, throughout this video, I am going to be posting shots up, or rather showing shots from the book. I will also post a link to the full gallery of all of the images on my website, but I just also wanted to talk through some of the process of shooting it, because it was a really interesting shoot. So I decided from the very beginning that what I wanted to do was shoot it both on digital and on 35mm film. So in terms of digital, I took my usual array along. So that was my Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, as well as my Lumix GX7, a usual range of lenses. A lot of it was shot on my 20mm and 45mm that I use for gig photography. But in addition to that, I also took along my 30mm macro lens because I wanted to try and get some of the real close-ups of the tattoo process while it was going on, because it's something I've wanted to do for a very long time, but it's something that is, well, challenging to say the least. It requires an awful lot of trust between the subject being tattooed, the tattoo artist themselves, and the photographer, because to get in and get the macro work, I'm going to have to get very close to the tattoo gun as it's being used, and if I make a mistake, if I cause a distraction, well, that's going to at best ruin the tattoo from a slipped action with the tattoo gun. Worst, it could actually cause damage to somebody, so it's not something that you can easily do. I've shot a few tattoo conventions and people being tattooed in passing, but I've always shot them from a distance for that very reason. But one of the things we talked about doing during this particular process was actually shooting really up close, and I got some shots I'm really happy with off of the back of that. Now, all of the colour work you see, and some of the black and white, but predominantly the colour work is from the digital material I shot. But in addition, I also wanted to shoot some film. So for the film, I wanted to shoot black and white for a number of reasons. The lighting was going to be fairly subdued, and because I've been moving around a lot, I also wanted to make sure that I was only going to be using available light. So in terms of film stock I took, now normally I would have defaulted to Ilford HP5 Plus at 400 ASA because it's a film stock that I'm very familiar with. I've used it for decades. But I couldn't get hold of any, unfortunately. I left it a little bit too late, and when I came to order the film, there was none available. So what I ended up doing instead was shooting a roll of Kodak 400TX and a roll of Agfa APX 400. Basically, I mixed film stocks because I wasn't sure which one I'd prefer, and at least I'd have a 50-50 shot with getting something that I hope I liked. Now, I shot both of them at a box speed. I wasn't sure whether I'd need to when I turned up, but there was enough light to be able to shoot them at box speed, so at 400 ASA. And in terms of the camera to use, I wanted something that would have decent autofocus so I could trust it in that regard, and I knew it would have some good solid metering, be quick and easy to use, and fairly familiar for me. So I actually went with my Canon EOS 5. Now, the EOS 5 is one of those cameras that, because 35mm cameras that are not retro in terms of their looks, tend not to get the attention from people or desire the more retro stuff, like, for example, my Canon FTB, A1, things like that. These can actually be picked up very, very reasonably priced, and this is a stunningly capable camera. Now, the 50mm f1.8, which is a cracking lens, it really is. It's a cheap plasticky kit lens, but the actual glass in it is really good. Optically, it's an excellent lens, and this is what I ended up using for both rolls. And the autofocus, so long as you stick to the center point, is solid on it. It's more than quick enough. It works well enough in the light conditions that I had, and the exposures off the back of it were great. They really did work well. in terms of how I found the film stocks, I slightly preferred the Agfa APX and would definitely use it again. I found it to be a little bit more contrasty and a little more suiting to my own personal tastes. I think there was a little less contrast in the 400TX, the Kodak film stock, but not so much that, you know, it was a film stock that I would never use again. I still quite liked it, but it just didn't quite have that same feel that I liked coming off of the Agfa APX. So overall, yes, the shoot was done. The films were all edited, both digital and the 35mm stuff. Worked with Dan, reviewed all the photographs, agreed which ones he wanted to include, went through the process of putting the photo book together with him, and then ordered them. And when it arrived, I'm happy to say that Dan was really pleased with the end results, and we got them submitted, and now just waiting to hear whether he passed his Fine Arts MA. Fingers crossed he did, because his work is excellent in terms of the sculptures and the more abstract pieces that he put in there. Really like those. But hopefully the postscript to this video will be Dan passed his Fine Arts MA. I certainly hope that's the case anyway. Well, hopefully you found this video interesting and a little bit different to the normal content. Certainly it was an unusual film shoot for me, but one that I thoroughly enjoyed. And if you have found this interesting, please do give the video a like. And if you want to see more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when new content gets uploaded. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Take care. Bye.